All right, so we have the Boxing All-Stars of June 2023. This is my version of the pound for pound list. We're going to break it down and see who are the current All-Stars in the sport. All right, so coming in at number 10, we have Naoya Inoue. I don't know if I just massacred that first name, but you guys know who I'm talking about. Inoue is on a crash collision course now. He's fighting schoolboy Steph Fulton next month, which is going to probably change his ranking in this list one way or another if he wins or if he loses. Inoue is one of the hottest fighters in boxing. He is a bantamweight, so that doesn't get much shine. There's not much competition. As a bantamweight, though, he has an 86% knockout ratio, which is crazy for any weight, but especially a little guy. His only real notable victories have been against Nonito Donaire. Inoue is undefeated, so that's why he cracks in the list at number 10. Number 9, we have Dimitri Bivol. As you guys know, Bivol was the first person to beat Canelo since Canelo was Canelo, in the era of Canelo. I know Floyd beat him before that, but since then Canelo had become quite a staple in boxing, and Bivol did beat him. Now, Bivol is naturally heavier. They fought at 175. Canelo is probably more naturally a 160 or 168 pounder, but nonetheless, Bivol did beat the number one pound for pound king in boxing, what people call the face of boxing, which I hate that whole phrase and that whole stamp, but we'll get into that later. Bivol isn't known for a hard shot, but he's a great boxer. He's a big dude. He's tough. His notable victories are against Joe Smith and John Pascal, and of course, Canelo Alvarez. All right, sliding in at number 8. We have the Mexican monster, David Benavides. Friend of mine. We've interviewed him before, but just a spectacular fighter. The speed, the power. He even showed good defense in his victory against Plant. He's a guy that Canelo doesn't want to fight for whatever reason. I'm not here to call ducking and all that. I don't like doing that, but Canelo is definitely choosing not to fight him. You can call it a business decision, I guess. At this point in Canelo's career, he's earned the right to make business decisions, but it's still robbing the fans and David Benavides of legacy fight and what we want to see. Benavides has an 85% knockout ratio. His notable victories have included Caleb Plant, David Lemieux, Anthony Durrell, and Jay Leon Love. He still hasn't fought a huge superstar in boxing, but once he does that, he will definitely fly up the rankings in this fight, in this list. David Benavides, again, man, spectacular young fighter, and in my opinion, maybe the most talented fighter in all of boxing right now. But he's not number one on the list because this list is about resume and skill, not just skill, but about resume as well. He has some climbing to do. All right, number 7 on this list is the Gypsy King, Tyson Fury. We all know Tyson Fury is a 6'9" heavyweight, undefeated heavyweight, lineal champion, amazing boxer for his size, great defense. Some say he's a little dirty, and he has shown some dirty tactics, but being that what it may, still one of the most talented heavyweights I've seen in a long time. People argue that Tyson Fury, he would have beat any heavyweight in history because of his size. I mean, he is like a cheat code. You know, Joe Louis, in my opinion, pound for pound is the greatest heavyweight who ever lived, but Tyson Fury would have mopped the floor with him because it's just the sheer size difference. It was unfair. You know, that's why you never compare eras in boxing. You can't compare eras because since Joe Louis's time in the 40s and 50s, there's been huge advancements in technology and training and nutrition and just in genetics. People are just taller in general. So Tyson Fury is number 7. His notable victories against Steve Cunningham, Derek Chisora. Of course, he was the first guy to beat Vladimir Klitschko in almost 11 years almost. Klitschko had gone undefeated, dominating the heavyweight. And of course, his 3 fights against Deontay Wilder and Dillian Whyte. Now, the reason why he's number 7 is because the only superstar he's actually beaten, well, he beat Klitschko, but this was a 40-year-old Klitschko. and he beat Deontay Wilder. So Deontay Wilder is the only prime superstar that he's beaten. So that's why he's number 7. All right. Coming in at number 6, the guy who we all want Tyson Fury to fight for the undisputed heavyweight championship is, I very, very feel, Alexander Usyk, number 6. I know, sorry for that horrible Russian accent. His notable victories are Tony Bellew, which was very impressive. Nobody knocks out Tony Bellew. Anthony Joshua twice, Derek Chisora, and then at cruiser, Marco Huck, Michael Hunter. I mean, Usyk, in his 15th pro fight, was already undisputed cruiserweight champion. Not the biggest punch, 65% knockout ratio, but him beating Joshua and Chisora, I mean, is very impressive because Usyk is a small heavyweight. Now, look, he's about 6'2", 6'3", but he's barely 200, 215. He is a small heavyweight. So it's not that much power, but he's a brilliant boxer. His movement, he's trained by Lomachenko's father, so you see it, the movement side to side. He's a brilliant boxer, and the only person who I think could give Tyson Fury a run, though I do think the size difference there is just too great if they meet. So he's number 6. Now, sliding in at number 5 is Jermell Charlo, undisputed champion at 154. Charlo has everything: power, speed, good defense, grit. He has it all, and he's a big guy for super welterweight, about 6'1". His notable victories are against Gabriel Rosado, Erickson Lubin, Austin Trout, Tony Harrison, who he lost to. That was his own one loss, but then he came back and KO'd Harrison in the rematch. And he did have those fights against Castaño, which was really close. The first one was a draw, but then in the rematch, he also KO'd Castaño. So he's beaten everybody he's fought, Jermell Charlo, and really, almost unbeaten, basically. So he slides in at number 5, and rightfully so. Next up, at number 4 on the All-Stars of Boxing list is Saul Canelo Alvarez. I mean, I don't really need to say much. Everybody knows who Canelo is, what he's accomplished. One of the biggest names in boxing history. Turned professional at 15 years old, and already by 23 was challenging Floyd Mayweather, who he lost to. That was Canelo's first and only loss in a very long time, was to Floyd. Canelo's resume is the best in boxing by far. Beat Carlos Baldomir, Kermit Cintron, Shane Mosley, Austin Trout, Arizlandi Lara, Miguel Cotto, Amir Khan, Liam Smith, Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., his 3 epic fights against Triple G, Gennady Golovkin, Danny Jacobs, Sergey Kovalev, who he beat for the light heavyweight championship of the world, Caleb Smith, Billy Joe Saunders, Caleb Plant, Isolandi Lara, James Kirkland, and Alfredo Angulo. Those are most of his notable wins. Canelo's, what do you say about that resume? Multi-division champion, I think, from welterweight all the way up to light heavyweight. His first loss since losing to Mayweather was recently against Bivol, who a lot of people think that he lost because, well, he stepped up and he went a little out of his weight. See, when Canelo beat Kovalev, when he fought Kovalev, I'm like, this is, size matters, and there's weight classes for a reason, but he proved everybody wrong. So it made people kind of forget that when he lost to Bivol, like, wait, no, that's really not his weight class. It's really not. And I'm not, I don't like Canelo or dislike him. I'm neutral here, but that's just not his weight class. So that's why I have Canelo at 4th, because although he should be 1 based on his resume, he is 4th because he did lose to Bivol. So that kind of stopped the momentum. And he's 32 to 33 years old now, which for him is old-ish, because he's been boxing professional since 15. That's a lot of miles. So he could be declining. We don't know physically. He could be. But that's why Canelo's 4th. All right, coming in 3rd is one of my favorite fighters, Javonte "Tank" Davis. I mean, what do you say about Tank? One of the hardest punchers and most explosive punchers in boxing by far. A lot of speed. And showing unbelievable boxing IQ and technical ability. People thought he was just a puncher. You know, when he fought Leo Santa Cruz or when he fought Barrios, arguably he could have been losing those fights up until the point that he caught them. Even against Rolly. Rolly might have been ahead or was close until so people were like, oh, it was one punch. You have to understand something. Kind of like with Deontay Wilder. When one punch lands all the time, it's not a fluke. It's being placed from years and years of experience. That's why it's landing. So Javonte Tank Davis is definitely solid at number 3 on the pound for pound list. Very worthy. Some of his notable victories, he fought Yuriorkis Gamboa, Leo Santa Cruz, Mario Barrios, Isaac Pitbull Cruz, Rolly Romero, and he just knocked out Ryan Garcia with a vicious body shot. Also putting layers upon his offense and his brilliance in the ring. Tank Davis might be one of the greatest fighters of all time when all is said and done. The only limitations I see are with his physical size, his height. Eventually, as he moves up in weight, if he goes even further up, when guys with, the annoying cliche, a good big man always beats a good little man, there is truth to that. If you have a size advantage and you're equally skilled and you know how to use it, most of the time you are going to beat the little man. Most of the time. So that's the only limitation I see with Tank. But even that, I'm not sure about. Now we go into the final 2 top all-stars on this list. Now, I normally don't do this, but this is one of the times where all is fair. Errol Spence and Terence Crawford come in both at 1 and 2. Basically tied at 1. Flip-flop. I can't choose either of them to be number 1. I can't choose either of them to be number 2. Flip-flop. They're 1 and 2 exchanged. The winner of this fight, which is happening, as we all know, July 29th, that person will be number 1. And the loser, we'll see. Might be number 2, depending how close it is. We don't know. A lot can happen up to that point. But I gotta match them evenly. Just like who I'm picking to win that fight, I can't. 50-50. I cannot pick one or the other. Errol Spence, and they're so evenly matched. Errol Spence has a 79% knockout ratio. Okay? Terence Crawford, 77% knockout ratio. Terence Crawford has 10 more fights almost. Terence Crawford has more knockouts than Errol Spence has total fights. Terence Crawford has 30 knockouts, Errol Spence has 28 fights. So what's that mean? It means the only thing it really means is there's an experience nudge for Terence Crawford. You can't get around that. That's just what it is. Even if it was at lighter weights, he still has more experience as a professional. So that means something. I don't know if it'll mean anything when they fight. I don't know if it'll adjust or navigate the outcome of the fight, but that's what that means. Their resumes are very similar. Notable wins for Spence: Chris Van Heerden, Chris Algieri, Kell Brook, Lamont Peterson, Carlos Ocampo, Mikey Garcia. Even though Mikey was coming up, going out of his weight class, Mikey is an all-time great. Sean Porter, Danny Garcia, and Ugas. Terence Crawford's notable victories. Terence Crawford's notable victories. Gamboa, Beltran, John Molina Jr., Jeff Horn, Jose Benavides Jr., Amir Khan, Kell Brook, and Sean Porter. Terence Crawford's a little more experienced. I already mentioned that, but he also has more championships. He's a WBO lightweight champion, was undisputed super lightweight champion, and now he's a welterweight champion. So he's had more belts. Now that doesn't really mean anything in terms of if he's going to beat Errol Spence, but it does put an asterisk on his name in terms of accomplishment. But who's going to win? I don't know. That's why I got to put them both tied at 1 or flip-flopping 1 and 2, however you want to define it. That's what it is. So that is the all-star list. So now I'm going to go into the all-star reserves, which is basically my way of saying the honorable mentions. Guys who are almost there, arguably should be there in the top 10, but are just underneath. Now these guys I'm bringing up. This is in no actual order. This is the honorable mentions aren't in order. They're just who should be there. So I'm gonna go down the list. First, we got Shakur Stevenson. What more needs to be said about Shakur? One of the greatest defensive fighters we've seen in a long time. Undefeated, slick, fun to watch. Now again, Shakur's resume, because he's still, he doesn't have any huge superstars on his list. His honorable wins are against Valdez and Jermell Herring. But Shakur has all of the ingredients to be one of the best fighters we've ever seen. The only thing I could say about him is some people say that he's not as exciting to watch because he's technical and doesn't pack a big punch. And now that he's moving up in weight, the power is likely going to be even lower. But Shakur could be, and in that lightweight division that he's fighting at, which is so stacked right now, or he might be at super lightweight, whatever. He might be the cream of the crop of all those guys. He might be. I mean, I have Tank ahead of him now just because of Tank's resume and accomplishments, but that could change real soon. Second down the list, 19-0, 100% knockouts. We have Artur Beterbiev, the Russian Nightmare. I don't know if that's his name, but I just came up with that. Now him also, there's not that many people at light heavyweight, so it's hard to get a resume that's notable, but his notable victories are Anthony Yarde and Joe Smith. Again, Artur Beterbiev has knocked out everybody he's fought. He's 35 years old, which might be a limitation, but Artur Beterbiev is kind of like he's that of legend. I know he's one of his co-trainers, my man John Scully, big shout. I know a few people sparred him, Chad Dawson. They say that Artur Beterbiev's strength, and not just punching power, but physical raw strength, is almost like a robot, like a cyborg. So the stories about him and his crazy power, not only does his record reflect it, the 19-0, all 19 by knockout, but sounds like he's RoboCop. And, that's the kind of strength he has, freak strength. Second on the list. Now this guy, Teofimo Lopez, my man, arguably should be in the top 10. Okay? We all know he just beat Josh Taylor to become undisputed at 140. He first guy to beat Lomachenko since Loma lost his second pro fight to Soto. He was the first guy to kind of dethrone Loma, who's also undisputed. Teofimo's other notable wins, Richard Comey. He fought Gambosis, who beat him. Sandor Martin. His last fight, which he didn't look very good. Now, the reason why Teos isn't in the top 10 for now, even after his amazing performance against Josh Taylor, is I think we need one more big fight to solidify where Teo's at. Because look, his loss to Kambosos, he released a medical report saying that he had air trapped in his lungs and it bothered him and it affected him and he could have died. Now look, people into conspiracy theories or people who just want to shit on other fighters can say, oh, he made it up, he's lying, blah, blah, blah. I'm not into that. I don't know for sure if he's lying, but it doesn't seem likely, especially since not only did it produce paperwork, which I know could be forged, but his paperwork, he looked different than he's ever looked in the actual fight. That just didn't look like him. And his last fight against Sandor Martin, which he won, but he didn't look very good, and that's the famously where he questioned himself, do I still got it? I'm cool with his dad. His dad said, look, I was asking him to come knock people out, straight up, which he also did with George Kambosos. I don't want him boxing, which is what his strong suit is, which is what he's experienced and good at. I want him knocking people out. Because the pressure gets to fighters sometimes. I'll say one thing about Teofimo is he is one of the most ridiculed fighters in boxing. So much hate. Now I know he's outspoken, and people could say, oh, he might bring it upon himself because he talks so much and he's so flamboyant. But it's like, well, yeah, maybe. But in boxing, people don't realize only 5 fighters per era, if that, are the ones making millions. The rest don't make anything. So in the day, especially in the day of social media, you got to talk. You got to promote yourself. So, double-edged sword. But his Teofimo's boxing skill and his power and his speed and his defense was on unbelievable display against Josh Taylor. So he's definitely in the reserves. After Teofimo, we have Virgil Ortiz, 100% KO. The only other one besides Beterbiev who has 100% knockouts in all of his fights. I think it's 17-0, all knockouts, I'm pretty sure. Could be wrong, but I do know it's 100% KO. Now again, with Virgil Ortiz, level of competition has not been high. He's relatively untested. His only really notable victory, in my opinion, is Maurice Hooker. But Virgil Ortiz's power is unbelievable. So he is going to add more spice to the 147-pound division. His next person on the list for the reserves is Stephen Cool Boy Steph Fulton. He is fighting Inoue, and if he beats Inoue, he will crack that top 10 without a doubt. Again, lighter division, not many big names to build, so his real only notable victory is against Brandon Figueroa, but Cool Boy Steph shows all of the tools and the skill to be one of the greatest in the sport. Next up, in the reserves, Vasyl Lomachenko. He's only 17-3, and I had a big problem with him at 7-1 or 8-1 being in the top 10 pound for pound list, which he was before his loss to Teofimo. I had a problem with that. I feel like, yeah, he was 400 amateur fights, only lost once, has a great record. You know, jumped into stellar competition. His first, second fight in, he's fighting champions. But you still got to build your resume. You can't just throw somebody there until they earn it in that top 10 list. So Vasyly's notable victories are against Gary Allen Russell, Orlando Salido, which he lost. That was his first loss. Rigondeaux, Jorge Linares, Luke Campbell, Teofimo, who he lost to, and Nakatani. Masavashi Nakatani, I think I might have killed that. Richard Comey, Jermaine Ortiz, and of course he fought Devin Haney. The Haney fight is one of the most controversial fights in a long time. At first I had Haney winning, then when I rewatched it, I had Vasyl winning it just by a hair, but I wouldn't argue Haney still winning. I wouldn't argue a draw, none of that. It was close. That was his last loss, which drops him out of the top 10. Simple. Now, lastly, on the reserves, we have Devin Haney. Now, Devin, this could be controversial. Some people might not agree with this, and I get it, and it was hard for me to put Devin out of the top 10, but Haney's 30-0, undefeated. There's an argument for him losing to Loma, which is one of the reasons why he's not in the top 10. Also, his resume. His notable victories are Gamboa, Linares, Kambosos, and Loma. Those are good fighters, but those aren't superstar fighters. And also, one of his downfalls, he's not a fan favorite to some fans because he doesn't lack that. He doesn't have that power. He lacks that one-punch knockout. Excellent boxer, smart, big heart, good speed, good movement, but still slightly green, even though he's undisputed champion, which is unbelievable. But we all know belts mean something, but what means more is who you beat. And if who you beat has a belt, that makes the belt mean even more. Who he beat to get the belt wasn't really stellar level competition, so it makes the belts mean a little less. We all know that. It's really who you beat and how you perform what means the most in boxing. Belts come second to that by far. All right, so that concludes my all-star list for June 2023, including the reserves. Guys, tune in. I'm gonna drop next month the all-star list. See who's in it, who's not in it. If there's any changes, what do you guys think? Do you guys agree? Is there somebody I'm missing? I want to know because I don't know everything. You know, I know my viewers. You guys are boxing aficionados for the most part. You know the sport, so I want to hear. Let me know in the comments if I'm missing anything, or if you guys agree, or what you have to say about the all-star list for this month.